Today's story is about a mystery that is both deeply disturbing and incredibly strange. This case contains many pieces of evidence and numerous clues. But the strange thing is that almost none of them seem to point in the same direction. In fact, some of the details surrounding this case are so bizarre that they almost seem to defy the laws of physics. But before getting into today's story, if you are a fan of true crime mystery stories, so please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our daily uploads. Okay, let's dive into today's story. At around 1 a.m. on May 16th, 2006, a 35-year-old woman named Rey Rivera suddenly woke up in her bed inside her home in Baltimore, Maryland. The loud sound of her home security alarm was echoing throughout the house, but strangely, Allison wasn't completely shocked by it. The reason was because the alarm had gone off at almost the exact same time the previous night. In the darkness of the bedroom, she could see the outline of her husband, Rey, sitting up beside her. Rey quickly grabbed a baseball bat from next to the bed and rushed out of the room. Allison followed closely behind him as they hurried down the stairs. When they reached the first floor, the alarm was still blaring. They switched on the lights and carefully looked around the house, but nothing seemed out of place. No one was inside. Every door was still shut. However, when Allison looked toward one particular window, she noticed something unusual. The window was slightly open. Oddly enough, this didn't completely surprise her. The previous night, when the alarm had gone off, the police had come to inspect the house. They searched the property but didn't find anyone inside. However, they noticed that this same window had been tampered with. Apparently, the movement of the window had triggered the alarm system, but the officers didn't believe someone had tried to break in. Instead, they suggested something Allison and Rey found hard to believe. The police thought the alarm had probably been triggered by a squirrel. At the time, the explanation sounded a little ridiculous, but it also seemed possible. The officers sounded confident, so Allison and Rey accepted the explanation. They shut the window, reset the alarm, and went back to sleep. But now, 24 hours later, the alarm was going off again, and the same window had been opened. That seemed strange. Was a squirrel really doing this 2 nights in a row? Allison couldn't shake the feeling that something about this situation didn't feel right. She started to wonder if maybe the police had been wrong. Maybe someone had actually been trying to get inside their house. And even more unsettling, maybe someone was trying to get to Rey. Allison and Rey had recently moved to Baltimore after Rey accepted a job at a financial company called Stansbury and Associates. His role at the company was to write an email newsletter that gave subscribers advice about which stocks they should buy or sell. But there was a major problem. Rey didn't actually have any background in finance. His experience was in screenwriting and freelance videography, not investing. He had only gotten the job because a friend who owned the company had hired him as a favor. Rey tried his best, but the reality was that some of the investment advice he included in the newsletter was probably inaccurate, which meant some readers could have lost money following his recommendations. That raised an uncomfortable possibility. Maybe someone who had lost money because of Rey's advice had tracked down his address, and maybe that person wanted revenge. The next morning, Allison quickly finished breakfast at the dining table. She was about to leave for a business trip in Virginia, which was about 3 hours away. After eating, she placed her plate in the sink, while Rey carried her suitcase outside. They hugged, said goodbye, and told each other they loved one another. Allison got into her car and drove away, waving to Rey as she left. Neither of them knew that would be the last time they would ever see each other. 3 hours later, Allison arrived in Virginia and spent the entire day working. Later that evening, around 6:30 p.m., she finally checked into her hotel room. She was exhausted. All she wanted to do was call Rey, watch a little TV, and go to sleep. So she picked up her phone and called him. The phone rang several times. Then it went to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. This was unusual. Rey almost always answered her calls, but fortunately, one of Allison's co-workers named Claudia was staying at their house in Baltimore that night while traveling through the area. So Allison called Claudia. Claudia answered. And what she said next surprised Allison. Earlier that evening, sometime between 5 and 6 p.m., Rey had been working on his computer. While Claudia was in the guest room, she heard Rey's phone ring. He answered the call. A few seconds later, she heard him suddenly say, "Oh shit." Then Rey ran out of the house. Claudia heard him jump into his car and speed away. He hadn't returned since. At first, Allison was confused but not completely panicked. She assumed something urgent had happened. Maybe it was a work emergency. Maybe a friend needed help. Surely Rey would call her back soon and explain everything. But he never called. The next morning, Claudia called Allison again. Rey had still not returned home. That's when Allison canceled her trip and drove back to Baltimore. During the entire drive, she called Rey repeatedly, but eventually his phone stopped ringing and went straight to voicemail. By the time she arrived home, his car wasn't there. The house was empty. That's when Allison knew something was very wrong. 6 days later, Allison's parents made a shocking discovery. While driving around Baltimore searching for Rey, they found Rey's car parked in a downtown parking lot. The vehicle had a parking ticket on the windshield, showing it had been sitting there for 6 days, meaning the car had been parked there the same night Rey disappeared. 2 days later, search volunteers spotted something disturbing on the roof of a nearby building. There was a hole in the roof. Next to the hole were several objects: a pair of flip-flops, a cell phone, and a pair of glasses. When police entered the abandoned room beneath the hole, they were immediately hit by the smell of decomposition. Inside the room, they found Rey's body. He was lying on the floor beneath the hole. At first, investigators believed Rey must have fallen through the roof, but the more they examined the scene, the stranger things became. The possible locations Rey could have jumped from didn't make sense. The distance from the main roof was far too great. The nearby parking garage wasn't high enough to cause his injuries, and the ledge that could explain the fall was almost impossible to access. Even more confusing, his glasses and phone were not broken, and the items found on the roof looked neatly placed, not scattered like they would be after a fall. Eventually, investigators focused on the strange note Allison had found taped behind Rey's computer. After analyzing it, the FBI suggested that Rey may have been experiencing a mental breakdown. Police began to believe Rey had possibly taken his own life, but Allison refused to accept that explanation. She believed her husband had been murdered, and she believed the answer might lie with the mysterious phone call he received right before he ran out of the house. Police traced that call back to Stansbury and Associates, Rey's workplace. But when investigators started asking questions, the company hired lawyers and instructed employees not to speak to police. And with that, the investigation stalled. To this day, the death of Rey Rivera remains officially unsolved. Somewhere out there is the person who made that final phone call. That person likely knows why Rey rushed out of his home that night. And they might also know what really happened to him. But so far, they have never come forward.
So that was all for today. Let me know what you thought of today's story in the comments. See you next time.